And we will give everyone a few seconds to log in before I say... Hi, everybody. It's Bob Cooney. We are here coming to you live from Paris Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. And I've been here for the Bowl Expo this week, which is turning into kind of a summer family entertainment center show. There's bowling centers are becoming FECs, and FECs are adding bowling products. And so there's a whole bunch of VR here this year and was last year. So, and I am here with a really special guest, Alex Moretti from Fallen Planet Studios. Welcome, Alex. Thanks for joining.
Hello, Bob. How are we doing? You okay?
Yeah, I'm awesome. Thanks for asking. Yeah, so look, we haven't had enough content creators on this show, and so I really appreciate you joining, because I think, as we all know, that this is it's going to take a village to build an industry, and this is an ecosystem like many are, but this one specifically is an ecosystem play, and we need everybody playing their role, and you guys have taken a really unique approach to this. So I'm really interested in learning more about what you guys do.
Yeah, well, I think we've been involved in it so early. My colleague co-founder, I just remembered to say that. I think it said founder in the bio. I best say co-founder, otherwise.
Sorry, I wrote the bio, so anyone offended, it's on me.
But we started in 2013, so that was a long time ago. He was a hobbyist, sort of. He got the DK1 headset. I tried VR. It was that moment that many people have had where you go, right, okay, I get this. I can see growth in it. So to go from there to where we are, for me, a big part of that is surrounding ourselves with companies that I feel are trying to do good things in the industry and trying to push it forwards, not trying to cash in, make a few bucks, put a game on Steam and see if it sells, or just try and do something slapdash. And I've seen a lot of that. So for us, pushing an ecosystem, helping to build it, that's something that we've been aware of from the start. This is a long-term play, and if we get it right, then everyone wins.
Yeah. So I think for everybody, what I'd like to do is start off by just showing the trailer for Affected the Manor.
Yeah.
For those of you that aren't familiar with it, this will at least give you an idea of what we're talking about, and then we can kind of dive into the various versions of it and the strategy that's behind it, which I find really interesting and unique. So let's go ahead and play this. And so let's start off with the horror genre.
Yeah.
Because, there's a lot of people, there's a narrative out there about, oh, we need to do, too many zombies, too many scares. I think it was, I don't know, it was Carmack or somebody said, scaring people in VR is the easiest thing to do. What made you pick the horror genre and stick with it the way you have?
The original reason was my co-founder, when he was experimenting with types of experiences to create and to do it using virtual reality. One of the earliest experiences he had was a horror experience. And at the time, he just felt he wanted to create something that was powerful. And obviously horror is powerful on a 2D screen. So stick a VR headset on it, there you go. So that was the initial impetus behind it. However, I totally agree with you. It's very easy to scare people in VR, and it's not very creative either. And we saw a lot of experiences. If you've got a screen strapped to your face, then that content creator can do anything they want to, and you can't do anything. All you can do is take the headset off. And that was important for us because we knew that we wanted to immerse people, but not immerse them to the extent where they don't enjoy it. And also, if someone takes a headset off, even if they put it back on again to complete the experience, you've got to start again. You've got to start again, immersing them and taking them on that journey. So for us, it's horror, but I always call it spooky. I always say to people, look, it's not gory or gratuitous. We try and play with sensations. Horror can do that. It's all about lighting and audio for us. So we'll maybe hit someone with a scare early on, but then we'll just tweak and pluck that tension with little audio stings or door slams. And the people are on edge all the time. And it's that anticipation of something coming that is a lot more powerful. Once you show them the boogeyman and it kills them, they got to go from the start again. They're instantly desensitized to it, and also get pretty bored pretty quick with going, right, I've got to go down this experience. So the horror came from sort of just an easy kind of low-hanging fruit to develop to begin with. But then when we started deciding what type of experience we wanted to create, we knew we couldn't just do jump scare. It gets boring. It gets boring for us. It gets boring for the person using it. So it was about making an experience that plays on sensations, and that can be a height sensation in there. It can be an encroachment of personal space, which is very, very powerful in VR. That's something you can't do outside of it. But always pairing back how scary we made it. And what we found was that it was a really compelling app. People loved it. We'd got the scare level just right. And you can't please all the people all the time. We get reviews saying, oh my God, took the headset off, wouldn't even go, this is horrendous. And we'll get a review below it going, oh, this wouldn't scare a 5-year-old. What is it, like a chair that moves or something? Which is, for us, it's great, because there's small elements to it. And we're really fortunate that our reviews, our ratings have kind of stood up from our first release, and it's underwritten a lot of our progress. So we wanted to create horror, but we didn't want to just scare people. We wanted to make an experience that was immersive. There's pretty much zero mechanics in the Manor. You press one button, you move in whichever direction you're facing. Again, for us, that was a positive. We knew a lot of people would be trying virtual reality for the first time, and they might be gamers, they might be non-gamers. But for us to maintain immersion, it's by taking away any distracting elements. So the first thing was single push button, moving the way you're facing. And the second was not to overwhelm them with tasks or things they had to complete to progress through it. We wanted everyone to get the same great experience. We wanted to keep a finite length, 10, 15 minutes, so they could have that beginning, middle, and end. But also not say, look, you've got to find the key to open the door, or you've got to complete the puzzle to go through. In the early days, we saw a lot of virtual reality where someone would be trying an experience, and they'd kind of be a bit lost in it, and they'd be shouting through, to their friend, going, right, what do I do? And the friend's going, what can you see? Can you see the door with the, and straight away we're like, right, we don't want that, because it just breaks immersion totally. So we sort of understood these fundamental functions that we wanted to have early on, and we took that through to the completion of the app.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. A couple of things. One is that the horror genre is going through a boom in Hollywood right now, right? It set a record 2 years ago, I think, for the highest box office for its genre in history, led by It and Get Out, and people love to be scared. And like you said, it's emotion. Right? People want to escape, drive emotion, and so I've never quite understood the backlash against horror in VR. It seems like at some point you want to give people what they want.
Yeah, I agree. It's just finding that line, because some people do want gratuitous horror, 18 R-rated films, and that's fine. For us, we're making a commercial application that we wanted people to pay for it. We wanted the mass market to pay for it, not just like fans of the horror genre. Again, early decisions we took, we made from the start was about, this is going to be a paid for experience. It's a paid for app. We want to try and build a business model. We want to understand how we can find sustainability in this industry. And we didn't have a whole host of titles that we could go, right, let's give this one away for free and get some, build up an audience, then monetize through in-app purchases, etc. We didn't have those options to us. So we always kind of look at, understanding the ability of the experience. So what was it good at? It's good at introducing people to VR. You put the headset on, you're somewhere else. VR at its core, especially back then, but it's still relevant today. We never wanted to make like an iPhone app with a VR element crowbarred into it. It had to be immersive as kind of the core function, and that's what we felt Affected was.
And so, you talk about sustainability, and I think this is, you guys have taken what looks like a fairly unique approach, and maybe, the other company I've seen that's done this a bit is Vertigo Games with Arizona Sunshine, where, you've stuck with an IP, you've created an IP, and then you've stuck with it and you've extended it and applied it to all the different platforms. Yeah. And so walk us through that journey a little bit, and where did you start? When did you get into the LBVR space? And how has that all, like, what's that look like now, the portfolio? Where's the money coming from, and what lessons did you learn from that journey?
Well, we started in LBVR actually before we did our first consumer release. Bizarrely enough, we Affected, to kind of clarify it, Affected was a trilogy when it first got released on the Oculus Share site. So this is all before Facebook have got involved. We upload it to a site. Anyone with a DK headset could download it and experience it for free. So that's where it first began as a trilogy. When we were taking that to a commercial product, and bear in mind there's like 2 years in between this, 3 years, but this was 2013 we started. Early March 2014, Facebook buys out for $2 billion. Later turns out to be $3 billion. So we go, right, okay, there's longevity in the market. So we kind of honed our skills a bit, but we're really developing for the consumer headset in 2015, the Oculus Rift. That's all VR was to us, the Rift and Oculus. That was the VR company. And then in 2015, we started seeing about Gear VR, Samsung Gear VR, giving out all these mobile headsets, 5 million out there. So we took a decision to stop the development that we're doing for PC and try and work out how to develop VR that would run on a mobile phone, which was very, very difficult, but it was such a key decision. And I can't really remember the day that we did it, but it was the most important decision we took, to jump forward slightly. We released that mobile experience in 2016 of June, knocked Minecraft up the top selling spot for that week.
That goes on the resume, right?
Well, I may have mentioned it once or twice before. The ratings, we were a top-rated experience when we released. 3 years later, we're still, I think, one of the top-rated experiences on the store. We got 75% of our reviews are 5-star or better. And it allowed us to monetize very quickly, and that's really underwritten a lot of our progress. So that decision, again, is one. It's whenever we do something, we always try and reflect on it, look back and learn. So we completely pivoted, and like I said, I can barely remember it because it was such a big decision for us to do at the time. But that agility is something that has sort of stuck with us. It's important for us to be agile as opposed to focus on optimizing one thing, which may sound strange because the Manor is what we're kind of squeezing everything from. But agility and being able to pivot, and we've kept the team small. All these ideas have kind of fed into how the business has been, from the amount of staff to whether or not we take on funding, etc. Understanding our core functions of how we want to progress has always stuck with us. So we started building for mobile, but we still had the demos that we'd done for the DK1. And early 2016, I don't remember if I saw a VRcade, but I was just thinking about how, there's barriers to entry, the headset cost, etc. How are people going to experience it? So I began to look online for VR arcades, and I found some, and we were definitely at the mercy of VR enthusiasts back then. Tech people that had kind of made a VR arcade out of wood, and not really business people, but that's fine because enthusiasm is a huge part of that curve. But there's still, for me, always that desire to associate ourselves with good companies that want to do great things in VR in the ecosystem, companies that I think are bigger than us or better than us, in inverted commas, companies that we can learn from. So I didn't just want to associate with any VR arcade, but I licensed to a few of them, and I used our original VR experience that we got running on the DK1. So that kind of began the testing the water really of LBVR. But very, very quickly, I knew that it wasn't a scalable model for me. You know, I'd have to find the arcade online. I'd then have to negotiate a price. We'd have to work out an end user license agreement. I'd then have to do invoices, send them out, track those invoices, chase up the invoices. And, you know, one of the interesting things for me as a software company is you can create a piece of software, a product, and then you can then sell it globally. You know, you can all over the world, you can sell it when you're sleeping. So for me, trying to take away those barriers that prevented this idea of what, you know, why this would be a great business model, I began to look for other solutions as well that would allow us to have a much, much wider reach with a lot.
And is that what led you to publish on all, like, as new hardware then came on the market? Is that kind of what's led you to that roadmap?
Sort of. I mean, that the kind of slightly different things, because at the time we hadn't released the Manor. We'd not got the reception that we got. You know, we'd done it in 2013, 2014. We'd got really lucky that one of the big YouTubers, or two or three of the big YouTubers, had picked up the Manor, and they were using it as one of those Let's Play videos. There was one of the biggest ones called PewDiePie.
Yeah.
So, and at the time, I remember my co-founder telling me that.
So wait, so you topped Minecraft on the charts, and you had PewDiePie review. There's two.
Well, PewDiePie reviewing it actually cost us money because we didn't realize who had reviewed it or what, but we got a call from our tech guy saying the website's crashed. You know, so I think we had to pay like $300 for the extra traffic. It's the story my co-founder Mark sort of we tell quite a bit, but we hadn't got to that that thing of kind of porting to everything. For me, it was just that was one vertical, and it was taking up a lot of my time trying to explore it. And I'd reach out and I'd find some good companies like Control V. They're a Canadian chain of arcades. I think they've got over 20 locations now, 22, 23 locations. But they'd seen us licensing, so they reached out to us and asked us to work with them. And I had a look at their model, and I really, really liked it. I think they were maybe just concept art at the time, but they were really focused on branding and user journey, you know, customer service, which is a bit of a bugbear for me outside of VR anyway. If I'm a restaurant or a store or something, I'm always keen to see how they interact with the customer, you know. So I was kind of instantly switched on by what they were doing. So I just wanted to work with them. And again, this kind of feeds into our overriding approach of they didn't really have a revenue model in place, and no one really had any revenue models in place. So when they were asking what we wanted to charge for our app, I just said, look, whatever you want to pay, you know, and if it's free to begin with, that's fine. It's free, you know. Well, let's just get the relationship going. We'll work this out as we go, but you don't know a revenue model. I'm not going to stamp my feet and say, we want this, so you're not getting that. You know, I'd rather be learning about the industry, and that involves sort of taking a risk, starting relationships off in whatever way possible. So, and we've used that a lot.
And that's really a really good comment, because, you know, some of the bigger kind of Hollywood-based companies that came into the location-based VR space early on, you know, were asking for 50% revenue share, and they get on the phone with me, and I'm like, you know nothing about this industry, right? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, like, you know, there's like rent and employees and hardware, depreciation and marketing expenses and customer acquisition costs, and they were like, yeah, but you know, this is the way Hollywood works, you know, that's. And they just didn't understand it, and for you to take that opposite approach, and there are some studios like Jake Zim at Sony is kind of taking this approach where, like, let's just build the business, let's build the industry, let's all invest. And so good on you for taking that approach.
Control V tick the boxes, you know, and we've got a great relationship with them. And like I say, this was just just someone I met online, Ryan, their CEO, but he's just doing great things. They built a franchise model early. They got a scalable model right. They kind of worked out, we're going to have VR stations, but we know how many people it's going to take to run it. They'd made a really cool video for users when they came in that kind of showed how to try VR. They did the obvious things, and they're one of our closest partners of ours. And it stood us in good stead, because when they franchise out now, that franchisee, to a large part, can pick whatever library they want. However, Control V present mandatory apps that they recommend that the franchisee should take on, and we're one of them. So again, that relationship, the stronger the relationship is, the more it can benefit you further down the line. It's just, you don't want to get in because of that. You want to get in because that person's doing good things, not like a surreptitious thing of, oh, if I'm nice, maybe I'll get, we're always very honest and very transparent and say, look, we're not sure what's going on here. We're working out a revenue model in the same way you are. But the only way we can get there is if we collect data. And that's really important to us. The more data we can get, the more informed we'll make about our decisions moving forward. And that's really the one thing that I'd say.
And I know that now you're on, all the platforms. You work with Springboard. I assume you're with Synthesis, and what's that been like? Like the direct licensing? Are you still direct licensing to arcades? Because I know a lot of content providers, that's just a lot of work. How do you deal with that? And at what point do you just say, all right, we gotta kind of solidify the content pipeline somehow?
We've kind of done that largely, but from the sort of transition over the past year or two, using those centralized distribution platforms like Springboard. And when I found, when I kind of hit the problems I had with scalability on that part of our business, I actively looked for those companies. One of them was Springboard VR. There was another one, an arcade that we were working with called VR Junkies. They were looking at doing their own proprietary system for tracking. So I was more than happy to work with them and consult with them and say what's important from a developer's point of view, from the content creator's point of view. Because for us to find a scalable model, I knew that I needed a company like that I could just upload once and get paid once. So I was more than happy to share that, what we felt was most important moving forward. So we did that with Springboard. We did it with VR Junkies, who we licensed to, and their backend's called Private Label, who runs their systems, but also has some turnkey as well. I think, but at the same point, like you said, we've ported to a lot of platforms, and that's something again that we kind of learned along the way. It's again being observant, seeing what the feedback is. We created Affected the Manor. That was the first title from the trilogy, and we expected then to go on and create the second title from it. But we just couldn't put the Manor to bed. It kind of wouldn't go away in that respect. We understood that it was a very, very powerful app at introducing people to virtual reality. We have very high quality environment, very simple controls, and it's scary, but not so scary. It's scary enough you'd play it and then go, I need to get my friend in this. I need to show my mom this, So we understood that introductory sort of value has a lot of value to the platforms like Oculus, like Google Daydream at the time, Pico, Xiaomi, PlayStation VR now. They've all still got that same problem of having to introduce people to VR in a good way.
Yeah. So is that kind of how you see Affected the Manor as kind of what I call the on-ramp for people, is to get them into it and understand
it? Very much so. And I, and this, to keep sort of jumping around, I say this to arcades a lot. We reach out to them constantly. We have people, biz dev and licensing managers in Fallen Planet that on a daily basis we're communicating with arcades all the time. And the first thing we say is, look, our success depends on your success. We've been around for a while, so if we can share information that's going to help you, we'd love to tell you it. And the first thing we say is, look, don't hook a Vive up to Steam. Let someone have access to 100 VR apps and just leave them alone for an hour to wade through it. Because if you do that, your business will close. Like we've seen it. And the whole, is VR dying? Is it thriving? Control V, they're franchising all the time. VR Junkies as well. I see chains of arcades, Emotion VR, UK chain, who we communicate with, and they've been in the press lately with raw data, and Servios, which I talk to. So if you do that, then you'll close. If you do well, you can thrive and flourish. So there's some key points to understand about curating those experiences. You know, what are you going to expose your clients to? Have you tried these experiences? You know, we spoke very briefly before we went on air about how I always chat to arcades about talking about like a restaurant. You know, I say, look, imagine you've got a restaurant here, because it's important to imagine that VR is a product. It's not the golden goose. It won't just lay an egg. You've still got to deliver it. You've got to deliver it well. So, and you can, what we spoke about, I say, look, first of all, the product, if you just get some VR and throw it in the corner. So someone comes into your restaurant, here's an amazing piece of meat, chuck it in the corner, go eat that. They're not going to enjoy it. The user journey's been bad. The other, you know, kind of analogy is the restaurant owner. I'm sure he's tried all of the meals in his restaurant. You know, if he sees something, he goes, oh, that looks fantastic. He loves what the chef's doing. Or let me try a bite of this. Great. I'm going to recommend this to my, you know, the customers that when they come in. New on the menu, I'm going to tell our regulars, you know. If an arcade operator just got 100 games in the library, it's impossible for them to try them all. I know they haven't tried them all. Otherwise, they wouldn't put 100 games up there, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like it's kind of like the Netflix thing, which we've all gone through. Where we sit there and we spend 20 minutes going through the menu, and we don't know what to choose because there's so much stuff to choose from, and there's a lot of science and research in product marketing around if you give people 3 choices or 5 choices, they'll make a choice, and if you give them 30, they don't buy anything. And so that curation of content, I think, is really, really important. And I love the idea of the onboarding experience for arcades, and I've talked to a lot of arcade owners. Where I've recommended they do something like take something like Richie's Plank or the Walk or one of those Plank experiences and offer that in a dedicated space that's themed, make it affordable, make it $5 or something, and people can go in and do it and give them a mixed reality shareable experience. And that's that onboarding. And I think that, you know, and I hadn't thought about your product in that same vein where it's kind of pick one. I love what the Park Playground does in Belgium, where they sell you a 60-minute experience. And the first 10 minutes of that is you get to pick one of 3 stations that are dedicated, and you do Fruit Ninja or you do the Plank or you do something else. And it's a really simple onboarding curated experience. And I love that.
Well,
idea.
Again, that's what we talk to arcade owners about. Richie's Plank experience, fantastic. You know, great studio, great product. And, you know, you can see how popular and powerful that experience can be if delivered right. And this sort of feeds into what kind of per minute rates and how we'll monetize in VR experiences. Because on that kind of spectrum within the per minute tracking, we're towards the top end. You know, we describe it as premium content, you know, quality content. I feel it is anyway, just because I see a lot of apps and I go, well, ours is, you know, it is kind of streets ahead about that, streets ahead of that. But from the point of view of when I communicate that to an arcade owner, I say, look, our app is very, very good at introducing people to VR, you know, but if you're renting it out for an hour, they only have to do ours for 10, 15 minutes. They've done the whole experience great. They're going to get to try something else within that. So they're seeing a variety of good content. And also our qualities, you know, our price may be premium, but you know, we're only 10, 15 minutes. We're not a turret defense. We're not a high score. People aren't going to come and beat the score time after time. And I say we're totally fine about that. You know, affected the Manor. We're on mobile. We're on PC. We're in LBVR, and we're using it to create a model there. But also on a wider point of view, we're using it to build up relationships with those arcade owners, with the platforms. We're able to see what type of content is popular in there. So I say, look, you're never actually going to end up paying us that much per month, you know. But I feel that we offer a lot of value to your arcade, where we can justify it.
And I think it's really important to understand like the product for your market. And you guys have gone really broad in some ways, but I always talk about going narrow. And so there's lots of ways to go narrow, right? There's a company I'm working with that's just launching here in Bowl Expo, and we talked about you could go narrow geographically. They're headquartered in Miami. I'm just focused on Florida. There's plenty of FECs in Florida, right? In your case, you've gone really broad on platforms, but you've gone really narrow on why you exist, which is you're an onboarding experience for VR. And that's super narrow. You're not talking about replayability, which is a thing that I talk a lot about in games that aren't really simple onboarding, right? And so I really love how you've gone narrow in a really unique way.
Well, you know, it comes down to context for us, and this is what we talk about a lot. And having spent so much time with the Manor, different iterations of it, we really understand about where it's going to be experienced once it's released. And this really feeds into the development that we do. From a platform point of view, if we're now, as we've learned, if we're working with, say, PSVR, which has got certain types of restrictions of mainly seated hand controllers, etc., compared to Quest, you know, 6 freedom. So we understand that context, so that'll feed into the development side of it. From the location-based VR side, it's very, very similar. You know, arcades, they do want replayability, etc., but in the theme park, they want throughput. So we were doing licensing to arcades in 2016. We had a different build on our Steam site, you know, our commercial version. Our arcade version, so the commercial version, so the consumer version, our commercial version for arcades, it was slightly longer. You know, we had 3 routes in it because we wanted to offer replayability at the time. We learned that we don't really get that much replayability. So let's condense those 3 routes down to 2, and that'll make it longer for us. And we're on a per minute remuneration, so it's better for us to be a bit longer. Whereas if we're in a theme park where they wanted throughput, the Manor we built modular. So we break it down, take out a couple of corridors, chuck away a few rooms, make the kind of punchiest experience we can, which was a bit more cheap, you know, jump scary, but that's what people wanted in that environment. And we'd make a 3-minute version or a 4-minute version for them. And we could do that to brief.
And I love this. And this is a thing that I'm writing about now, which is not enough people. In fact, you might be the only person that I've talked to that seems to understand this concept, or at least talks about it, which is the context of the consumer in the location that they're in. If you go to a theme park, you're expecting jump scares and thrills and short duration. If you're in a movie theater, you're expecting to be told a story, right? And so the context and the mindset of the customer and where they're going, it has to make sense. And if it doesn't make sense to them, then there's something incongruent. And then they're like, they don't know what it is, but they just know it doesn't work for them. And I love the fact that you understand
You know,
that.
to take that kind of a step further, we'd done an installation with a French company called CL Corporation, and it's kind of a turnkey product. It's an elevator that you can walk in, and 4 people can stand in it. You'd wear a Gear VR headset on the way in, so there's a pass-through camera. The elevator door closes, and then it cuts to our VR experience, and we take the user on a journey. And we're licensing that in Vegas, and it was at CES, and I went and checked it out. And it's a really good experience. It's kind of 4D. There's, you know, wind, water blowing, etc. But there was also a really cool whitewater rapid ride as well. Totally moved, like really good. You know, I like in LBVR, I like hardware with software associated to it, and some of our partners do that. I think it's a much better offering for the user. And I was really impressed with this, and I tried it, and the content was really good. But I noticed from the figures that we were doing a lot better on our elevator than what the other experiences in the arcade were. And for me, and I could be wrong, but it's how I perceive it, the whitewater rapid thing, it's right in the middle of the shop. You know, it's by the window to the Link.
This is over at the Link, right?
Exactly,
The Link
exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas our scary hotel elevator, when people are choosing what do they want to do, on the elevator one, you get to go inside it. You know, the doors close. You can still see through the railings, etc. But the user is going to be a lot less self-aware of, how do I look like? You know, am I being scared in front of 1,000 people walking past me in Vegas? So again, when creating those sort of turnkey products, thinking about if the user is going to be self-conscious and they might, for all the will in the world, they might go, I really want to try that VR experience, but I don't want to look stupid doing it, you know? So if you can bring these ideas into it.
Yeah, and that was an issue all the way back in the 90s with virtuality, where people were just self-conscious about how they look in VR, and it's still an issue today. And it was really interesting. There's a guy named, I think it was Mark Weiss, who operates a FEC. I want to say it's in Florida, but I'm not sure. And he put in a Chaos Jump, one of those kind of inspired by Hollowgate 4-player truss VR systems. And what he did is he put a curtain around it that was, when you start the game, the curtain closes and encloses the players. And it was really dramatic. And it reminded me of a ride that I used to do, Caterpillar ride, when I was a kid at the amusement parks, where the thing would go over and it would come back and it would cover you up. And I think what happened is he said he had people that played it who would not have ordinarily played it because they were concerned about how they looked, and it's still an issue today.
I think that's a bit of friction that will always be there within VR for some people. You know, we can get rid of wires, we can increase form factor, you can make it easier to put it on and play, but there'll still people that might feel, I don't want to look stupid. You know, I'd love to try it.
Yeah.
So if you can factor that in,
I think you can look at, you know, you can look at the karaoke business, and there's two ways to do it. There's karaoke bars where there's a stage and there's an audience, and that appeals to extroverts. But a lot of people want to sing and they're not extroverts, so you get private rooms and you can go with your friends and do it. And I think that we have to figure out how to do both of that, because there's this talk about social experiences, right? And everybody wants a social experience, but there are different kinds of social experiences. And how do you deliver that and do it in a way that's respectful to the introverts out there that actually care about those things and think about it?
I couldn't agree more. And on that topic, karaoke is something I've sworn down I will never, ever, ever do, because I'm a bad singer. Not funny bad, just bad. And then I was in Seoul a few weeks ago, and we were in a private karaoke room, and lo and behold, you know, I did a 6-minute version of Bohemian Rhapsody. So that's not necessarily a good thing, but it just shows that if you apply, you know, thought of context to it, if you're able to facilitate that enjoyment for the user, then ultimately they're more likely to pay for it.
Yeah. So, you know, you talked about arcade challenges and reaching out to the arcades. And one of the things I found is on one of the Springboard blogs, I think, they had posted these posters. Okay. And I wanted to talk about this a little bit. Is in now, you know, these are, I'm assuming, point of sale marketing materials that you've made available to arcade owners. Now, in my experience, it's really hard to get arcade owners or retail operators to do anything. And back in the days at eCast, we were doing digital jukeboxes. We'd have coasters that promoted the jukebox, and we would send cases of coasters out to bar owners. And then we'd go do site visits, and the box was never opened. It was just sitting in a closet somewhere. And all they had to do was like open it and put them out. And we couldn't even get them to do that. So why did you do this? What was your success rate? What were some of the challenges? What did you learn through this? Because I think we need to figure out how to do more of this, but it's hard.
So fundamentally, when we're looking at the arcade market, like, we'll separate and go, right, there's a lot of arcades out there. Some will license us, some don't license us. So if we call the ones that license us audience 1 and the ones that don't license us audience 2, from those audience 2 members, we want to get them into audience 1. We want to speak to people, and we want to communicate. We've got a good experience for these reasons, you know, as we've mentioned, it's introductory, etc. But then when they're in the audience 1 category, we don't just want to forget about them, because we're on a per minute rate. We're not on a monthly license fee. So how do we do that? We need to try and work a way to engage with the arcades for them to, for the users that come in to want to play it. So the posters serve 2 functions. It gives us a reason to communicate, to speak to arcades. Arcades that aren't particularly well decorated. So we say, look, here's free artwork for you. Here's our recommended print guidelines. Put it up. Your arcade will look cool. It's branded. You know, we can put your logo on there. We'll put, you know, the Vive, or if you Springboard Synthesis, etc. We'll put that logo on there as well. I know some arcade owners that have printed them out and taken them home to hang up at home because they think it looks cool. So it facilitates a conversation with them. It lets them understand that we're proactive in the industry, and we say this is what works in other arcades, and it does. Put them in the window. It brings people in off the street. You know, movie theaters have always got the images of what's on in there, you know. And then from the user, when the user walks in, they go, I don't know what to try. What's that game there on the poster? And then the operator can have that same conversation that our team will have had with them previously. Oh, it's a really cool horror app. It's spooky but not horrible.
Yeah. Have you any way for you to measure, like, what percentage of the people you sent them out to put them up, and of the ones that put them up, are you seeing what kind of revenue or usage uplift? Do you have any insights into that?
No, but you know, for us, we collect as much data as possible, but it's very much about kind of penetration rate at the moment. You know, it's not easy for us to see if it's, you know, did they implement a poster in week 1 when we were installed? Did they implement it in week 6? So it's hard for us to know. It's just, we just have to have, to an extent, blanket initiatives that we feel this is going to give us more sustainability. It's a proactive approach to us doing it. And I think, you know, that's something that we've always been very proactive. We could sit there and just make some trailers and, you know, try and put it on YouTube or, you know, to engage. I don't think that'd work. So for us being very direct with it and having these assets for, you know, collateral to give to these arcades and say, look, hang it up, you know, it looks really cool, put your arcade on it. And then I just know as a result that can only really lead, you know, it won't lead to a decrease in it, basically. So it's, and I love quantifying everything, as much data as possible. Brilliant. It's just one area we're not really able to do, but it's very much just an initiative that has been, we've had a great response from the arcades that we speak to.
Yeah, cool. So, you know, we've touched on a little bit around, you know, this concept of turnkey solutions and partnering the software with the hardware inside of location-based. You guys recently went to GDC, and I think I saw you at IAPA, and when you did the integration with Ultra Haptics. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. I've got a video that I'm going to show, at least a clip of the video from GDC. But you know, and Ultra Haptics just acquired Leap Motion in a really interesting deal. And I think that's going to be a really good integration. And there is, you know, there's also. Say that again.
I think someone needed to buy them. You know, they've kind of been a bit static for a few years. They've got a great product, and Apple was banging on the door. For whatever reason, it didn't happen. And I think Ultra Haptics is a really, really great partner for them.
Great strategic fit. I think one of the challenges with that I've been concerned about Leap Motion is, you know, all the headset manufacturers are building better and better hand tracking into the headsets, and so at some point that technology is going to have to either be licensed, or they're going to become obsolete, or they're going to have to find some way of making sure that it's continuing best of breed. And hopefully the integration with the Ultra Haptics is going to work. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Ultra Haptics, I think this video will give you, and I think they're lined up for a deep dive coming up in the next month or so. So we'll do a little bit more, but I'm going to try to fast forward through part of this video. Sure. So give me a sec.
Steve Masters from God. When you stick your hand through this sort of portal, you can feel the actual line of the.
Oh no! What Ultra Haptics does is they use sound or ultrasound to create feeling sensation when you pass your hand over something, and it's a really granular technology, and so they can simulate all kinds of different sensations. And so, so with that, I'll just go ahead. So what this person is doing is passing their hands over a transmitter of ultrasonic radiation, and getting sensation that links up with the VR sensation. It's really fantastic.
That portal, and then when you're holding it, that portal, and then when you're holding an orb, you can feel it spinning. The little Ouija board thing was really incredible. I see this being used a lot. How many developers have this hardware, and they're starting to think about using it?
Well, we're the first company to be working with Ultra Haptics to create a commercial product. Our studio, Fallen Planet Studios, we've been developing in VR for 5 years now, working in location-based VR for 3. So we've been using our expertise to make commercial products, which we can license to our partners. So we're definitely the first studio doing it, but we're here to show other companies that they can implement it using the Unity tool into their experiences to deepen that level of storytelling and immersion. Just the audio, Bob.
And there's always what's the next link in the chain that's broken. Yeah. And so when you touch something and you don't feel it, it immediately breaks that immersion. And so one of the nice things about the integration with Ultra Haptics is you actually feel something, and it just drives that immersion super deep. What's your experience been with it, and what are your thoughts on the technology and its application for out-of-home?
It's amazing, the technology. You know, it's magic, really, isn't it? You know, you can feel stuff with no gloves, no hardware, no peripherals, nothing you need to educate a user to put on and do this, etc. It's very intuitive. Again, it's a company that I've been aware of for a good couple of years, and they weren't really doing anything in VR. I was just really impressed with the technology, so I'd always sort of say hello, really, you know, share their posts on social media, etc. Just make ourselves kind of known to them and fans of what they do, and that, you know, we're always interested in working with them at some points. They reached out to us, but you know, they've got, you know, what their technology can do they kind of got three main markets. It'll be digital signage, automotive, because obviously we're getting a lot more touch screens, etc., and location-based VR. The LBVR one's been a great learning curve for us within that, dealing with ultra haptics, because it kind of has that overarching view of managing the person's expectations with a product. So if you can look at VR on its own, someone go, oh wow, VR, they put it on, they get a rubbish experience, it's no good, with ultra haptics, when we first created that experience, we use what I call sort of anchor points. So that's a narrative experience. We've used our affected IP, which you mentioned early on. We tried deliberately to create IP because we felt there was no IP, no game developers out here in VR. Let's do something if we can do with IP. So when we meet with a company like Ultra Haptics, or say the elevator in Vegas, they'll approach us to work with them, and I'll say, yeah, but can we make it affected? Because that really adds value to us. So we made a 4-minute narrative experience, and we use the ultra haptic points to kind of anchor certain parts in that experience. Because when I first demoed it at IAPA, I noticed that when people were trying it on, because you go, here's an ultra haptics experience, put it on, your hand's going to get tracked. Audio waves will create little sensations on the palm, which you'll be able to feel it, and that can be modulated, synthesized, etc. It's incredible. But they'd put the headset on, and straight away they're kind of banging everything, expecting everything to be haptified, and if they do that and they don't kind of get everything, then they kind of go, it's still, bear in mind, it's still incredible technology, you can feel stuff, but it's how you kind of manage those expectations. So with our development, we created that, we implemented into it, but we learned very quickly that anything that's not haptified to take away from the user. And what you saw there is a really good example of the painting floating towards the person. Nothing's around them that they can touch. It's a standing experience. Yeah. They can't reach out and grab anything. But people will naturally stand in this position because they know they're kind of above this array. So we learned to kind of bring everything to the user. That one just passes over the player. So they feel it straight away. And then we have an avatar hand that shows them to go back and forward. And they go, whoa, hang on a sec. There's something there that I can feel, And ultra haptics, they've got different types of sensations. It might be a rotating, spinning one. There could be a shape there. We could create our own sensations, but they've got this, they're kind of stock ones, which I'd experienced. So we kind of worked back from that. We said, what are these cool experiences? How can we factor it into the story that we're telling? How can we use them together to kind of be greater than the sum of its parts? So it was really enjoyed working on that project.
Yeah, and then I saw, I think it was in one of the Emotion arcades, you guys then did a, arcade game version of, I think, this experience. And so, like, how did that come about, and what's the feedback?
The feedback's been great. That came about because Ultra Haptics are a really cool company, very big company. Lots of decisions to be made, and for them to make any sort of choices, they do case studies a lot. They get lots of user feedback. So that installation in Emotion VR, that's located very close to Ultra Haptics UK offices, and Emotion VR's headquarters is actually located very close to me. So I've been aware of that company for a while. Again, they did a fundraise last year, which put them on my radar, and they're in LBVR, trying to do good things, push the industry forward. Tick, tick, tick. I'll say hello and we'll reach out. So that installation was purely as a case study for Ultra Haptics. And what they were examining was, did people feel more immersed with it? Are they more likely to try it again and come back because of this additional thing, which again is really valuable information to them when they're moving forward their product to a wider market and to wider audiences.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like just a user feedback case that we could both learn from. And it was fantastic. And you might have seen on the image there, on the Blue Loop article, there's a person stood next to them without a VR headset on. They're stood in front of a digital signage poster. So again, that's part of the markets that Ultra Haptics work in. They've just created a Pokemon poster where you've got a digital signage there. You've got the array, so you can put your hand and you can still feel it without the headset on. So that was really interesting for us because it kind of allowed us to bridge the gap. You're about to put a VR headset on, which can be confusing for some people that have not tried it. You're going to start feeling things with your hands, which again can be bizarre. But using a non-VR haptified poster allowed a person to walk up, they'd wave the hand and they'd instantly feel it. The hand's tracked, you know, it's been got by the leap motion.
Yeah.
They'd see on the screen, oh, I move my hand, the painting, well, I feel it, you know. So it's actually a really good stepping stone for them to go, right, okay, you've kind of learned a little bit what's going to happen here. You know that if you move your hand over here, you're not going to feel anything. You know you can't reach all the way past it because you're going to hit a screen. Because I've seen everyone try everything with VR demos. So it's a great little stepping stone for them. And also, from a wider point of view, if we look at this as a commercial product, then that really low friction, easy attraction, installation for someone to go, oh yeah, cool, wow, that could be part of the queue. You know, the people that are queuing up to the main ride go, oh wow, that's great. You know, they use that for user engagement in cinema lobbies anyway. That's what they're trying to do. And ultimately, anything that keeps a person in front of a poster for longer, advertisers are going to love. So it's got lots of functions that will benefit the user, benefit the operator, benefit anyone that's trying to convey the message. So the Ultra Haptics, I was just really impressed with them as a company. And just again, that approach of luckily came back where they wanted to try VR experience, and we were kind of top of the list.
And so you've done a couple of integrations now with hardware. You've got the elevator experience, you know, at the Link in Las Vegas, and you've got this one. Is there, you know, are there plans to develop any of these into actual products that roll out into the market? I mean, there's a lot of demand now. The family entertainment center market, FECs are adopting VR. They're realizing that it's here to stay now. Both Dave & Buster's and Main Event are going to be building VR arcades inside their larger arcades with multiple attractions. So what's your thoughts on that? And
well, you know, two thoughts. One is I much prefer seeing hardware with software. You know, I don't get me wrong, the arcades, they've definitely got a place. Like Control V, those single stations, they work very, very well. Will Stackable from Springboard did a really good article recently, you know, titled "Should We Kill VR Arcades?" You know, and the first line, okay, it's clickbait. You know, he's saying, look, it's a place where groups can come. You know, we can take elderly people and show them the pyramids of Egypt. Like, there's lots of benefits for having those type of installations. So you know, I'm still a fan of VR arcades. The VR theme park is how I differentiate it. So we work with a really cool VR theme park in Korea called Monster VR. And in there, you walk in, if you're going to do a hot air balloon ride in VR, there's a 30-foot hot air balloon in the corner. You know, you walk in, you'll get in the basket, etc. It really ties it together. So this is really good for me for two reasons. That one, it's just a more compelling experience, you know. The second side of it, which is something I've always been aware of, is business models, revenue models. We talk about that a lot. I'm always trying to find robust models in Fallen Planet that are scalable for us, that give us information that can inform our future decisions. But I look at the revenue models of businesses we rely on, like arcades, etc. And you know, when a company like IMAX VR goes under, that can be a really bad thing for the industry. People go, oh well, look, VR's dying, etc. But again, it's like, is it, or did they get the revenue model wrong? You know, how many restaurants closed down last year? Is food dying? You know, we know it's not. So a revenue model in a VR theme park, you know, for me, I look at models of, say, a traditional theme park. I might go to a traditional theme park to do a roller coaster ride. And for argument's sake, let's say I pay $100 to get into that theme park. And I might be there for 6 hours walking around, looking at rides. What do I go? And this, that, or the other. My friend
standing in line.
Well, yeah, but my friend wants to go on this one, so I'll watch that. I'm going to walk and check out this. And I might have the best day ever. And I'll have gone on 6 roller coasters that were just great. I've had 6 great experiences and I've really enjoyed my day. But those roller coaster experiences might have been 5 minutes in total each. So I've been on a ride for 30 minutes of my entire 8-hour day, but I've had a really cool time. I've walked around. I felt like I've got value for money for it. I've spent money on food and beverage. I've been to the restaurants. I've had an experience. And that's one of the benefits of VR theme parks like that. And especially Monster VR that kind of understand that model. You'll pay a single price to get in. You can go on, say, 3 rides or maybe 5, depending on your ticket price. You can walk around, see people using it. You feel like you're always involved with what's going on. And then you'll maybe try one ride. Oh, that was cool. I'm going to go get a burger now and think about later on. And if you look at that model compared to, say, the arcade, where if you're not got a VR headset on, you're just kind of probably sat in the lobby waiting for it to come free and kind of looking on your phone or something. So I would feel that's a more robust model as well, and it offers more value for the customer, but you can actually charge a higher ticket price as well. So I like.
Yeah, and
sorry, Bob. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying. So that for me, the hardware with the software is very compelling. I think it makes a better user experience. But when you put that within a wider revenue model where they can get involved and feel like they're engaging with it, as opposed to just sort of where a traditional VR arcade model might fall short, that's where I love a VR theme park.
Yeah, and I interviewed Tommy Goodkin from VR World in New York City, and they take kind of a hybrid approach, which is they use just the booths, but each one's dedicated to an experience, right? And so you have to walk around and see what you want to do and queue up for that particular experience. And so, and they have a good mix of dedicated hardware attractions along with just standard consumer VR rigs, but set up with on a content by content or title by title basis. And so,
well, I was just going to say, but to answer your initial question, if you're in a VR library, and we're on a per minute revenue thing, and we're waiting for people to try us and hope that they look at the poster or that the arcade operator says, "Oh, here's a cool experience. It's a great introduction." That's one, model. The other side is if you're just the software associated with the hardware, and they can, the theme park can differentiate when someone's used your experience, then you can do a revenue share. You can get a much better revenue from it off a result. For us, that's really interesting, especially seeing, like you talk about FECs, etc. I think they're definitely moving more into it because it's easier for them to sign off on budgets for it. Maybe they've always wanted to do it, but how do they do it without getting burned? And you look at something like Virtual Rabbids, which has been really, really popular.
They just installed their 500th
unit. Fantastic. And for me, I look at that and I imagine if I'm an operator that wants to get into VR but isn't sure how, they look at a Virtual Rabbids and go, it looks just like the other stuff that we've got in our arcade that people are happy to do, that I'm happy to sign off on a budget. So it gives them the confidence to go, right, I'm gonna do that,
And it was sold, it was manufactured by LAI. So it was a really interesting story there. So in 2015, IAAPA, Ubisoft and D-Box brought that and had a booth at a demo demo, and they and they were using that as a way to engage the traditional amusement manufacturers. And LAI, which is an amusement manufacturer owned by a family who's been in the industry for freaking decades, and they brought it to market and sold it through traditional coin-op distribution. And so it was a very comfortable purchase for arcade operators once they saw it earn. Once they saw that it was actually generating revenue.
Comfortable purchase because of how it looks, but a comfortable model as well. No operators. It's coin op. You can sit down in that. You see a VR headset above you. You go, right, I guess I do this. And that's it. And the ride sort of takes care of itself for you. So I think as kind of manufacturers understand the barrier that those operators want to overcome, they want to get VR into their experiences, but they don't want to get burned doing it. They don't want to, spend 6 figures on it and then explain to the boss why it's not working. I think as we're seeing the hardware always increases, which is great. It's trickier for the LBVR operators because they don't want to get left behind. But we're seeing more of a standard come now with it, and Quest. We're going to see that, in kind of multiplayer. I think that's that's one of the big things for us that we see multiplayer in VR. It's just cool. It's fun. It's like laser tag that I used to go to as a kid, but you can be in any environment, do anything, have any gun, So I think those multiplayer experiences with full body tracking, like the Dreamscape Immersive, for me, that's the best VR attraction I've tried, the Lost Pearl one. And that user journey started when I walked in. Oh, how are we doing, sir? We've got your departure time coming up. Departure time, great. Let's go on a journey. And they've got branded merchandise. They collect data as well, which obviously informs their business model. And
that's something I think not enough operators or solution providers are doing, is building that 3-act story. The first act, they focus on the second act, which is the conflict. But what's the setup and what's the resolution? Exactly. And I agree, Dreamscape does a great job of that. I think Virtuix with their new Virtuix Omni Arena do a great job of that. But there's not enough of that in out-of-home entertainment in general, and certainly
Virtuix, another great one. We found them in 2014. They were doing a Kickstarter campaign. We said, look, our app is walking around a haunted house. use it for free. You know, if you can get through your development, demonstrate it. If you can get through manufacturing and fundraising and distribution, if you do all that, then maybe there's revenue at the end of it for us. You know, so we just supported them through it. We were a launch partner with them in China. We've got exclusivity. You know, I think we're on over sort of 3,000 of their devices now. They've pivoted a bit to VR esports. Fine, whatever is important for them to survive. But again, they're very aware of it, and they talk about, you know, it's a 5-minute experience that we can make into a 20-minute customer journey, and then you know, they're very focused on the customer service side of it, which is, you know, always important to us.
Yeah, wow. So I've got like 10 more questions I want to ask. Unfortunately, we're out of time, so we might have to have you back for another edition.
Anytime, Bob. Anytime.
Yeah. So really appreciate not just the time you've given me and the audience, but the support that you've showed the industry over your whole company's life so far. It's really amazing and generous, and I think it kind of goes to the whole thing that I believe in, which is, you know, there's a scarcity mindset and an abundance mindset, and the scarcity mindset is that in order for me to win, other people have to lose. And the abundance mindset is that we can all win and there's enough for everybody. And the more we create, the more exists. And you guys clearly, and I think the industry in general shows that. It's one of the things I really have liked about working in VR this time around is everybody seems to realize, as the industry, you know, is it a rising tide lifts all ships?
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
And the tide has still got a long way to go. So yeah, really appreciate you and what you've done.
You know, it's us, but you know, it's everyone at Fallen Planet. It's my co-founder Mark. You know, the two of us have been doing it for a long time. We've taken on some key hires lately. We've got Andrew that deals with our global licensing and biz dev. We've got a new studio manager coming in, and they all understand that ethos of, we care about details, you know, because that's all the Manor is. You know, it's a house. You know, if the doors were too big and the couches were too small, you'd instantly be out of it. And we spent a lot of time before we did our first release, detail. We did that, and it kind of stood. It kind of worked so well for us. We have to hang on to those lessons, so we'll always try and move forward to them. So, yeah, anyone that's cares about details and cares about pushing the industry forward, we're always happy to chat with them and share what we've learned.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much. So, next week we're going to take the week off. It's the 4th of July. Here in America. Excellent. So I'm assuming everybody will be out like eating hot dogs and shooting off fireworks.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a break. We're going to test out some new webinar platforms. And so when we come back, we might be on a new platform.
Cool.
And in the meantime, we'll see you online. I've got, I'm just going to put that up. I don't actually have it. So I've got a new blog I've been writing in case you guys have not been getting it. You can go to bobcooney.com and just sign up for the blog there. Talking a lot about operators and mindsets and the combination of operator, location, consumer, and what those intersections are, and how to evaluate both the right attraction for you. And hopefully that's informative to people. And we got a big slate of people coming up on the back half of the year. So thanks for all the support. Don't forget to share this with your friends. We'll send the replay out to everybody. Alex, have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful weekend. And where are you going to be next? What might we run into?
Maybe there's Gamescom coming up soon. I'm not sure. There's the IAPA in September. I've done a lot of traveling at the start with Ultra Haptics. You know, we did IAPA in October, CES in Vegas, GDC in March. Then April, we were at the Tokyo Game Show. And I was a speaker at a VR AR conference in Seoul at the end of May, June. So I really need to spend a bit of time in the office really and focus on that. But I'll definitely, you know, anytime we've got something on the calendar, I'll reach out, Bob.
You know, I'm moderating a panel at IAPA Paris, France, in September. And so let me see, it would be really good to have your perspective on there. Let me see what's open left, and maybe we can rope you into that. I think you'd add a lot to the conversation.
That'd be really cool. I think we'll be there anyway. So yeah, I'd be really interested in doing that.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks again for everything. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you in 2 weeks with somebody. I don't know who it is. I don't pay attention to that shit. All right, guys, take care.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.